What's cracking, ladies and gentlemen? 49 coming at you, another community shoutcast for the OUSA Dota League Season 2. We're loading into game number 2 of Horsemen and Ruckus up against Momentum Dota. Horsemen and Ruckus were able to take a very convincing game number 1. It's due to the fact that Momentum Dota, they drafted a deathball lineup, but they failed to execute as they lost all 3 lanes decisively. A lot of early rotations coming up from Horsemen and Ruckus, as the support duo, the Warrunner as well as the Sand King, were able to constantly rotate around the map. And the reason why they were able to pull that off is because they had 3 self-sufficient cores. The Silencer, you can leave the Silencer alone against Faceless Void, because with the last word build that Dumbledy went, he was able to completely zone out and out-harass GS Donkey. GS Donkey had 1 CS about 5 minutes into the game. He was completely ineffective that game. We've got a Faceless Void first ban coming out from Momentum Dota, so don't want to deal with it. And so when you've got 3 self-sufficient cores, you never know where the supports are. And that exerts pressure all across the map. The mid lane player, Let's Get It, up on the Death Prophet, was constantly being hit by arrows coming out from UGTFO. The Sand King wasn't even there, he was just farming the jungle the whole time and occasionally popping into lane. And King Killer on the Quas Exalt Invoker was able to get very early Yule Scepter up. And with the early Yule Scepter and 6 points in Exalt, every single target, every hero you catch out is dead. You just cyclone them up, use it to set up your Meatball Deafening Blast with the Sunstrike at the very end, in case you need it. And GS Donkey, because he was so shut down, and because he opted for a bizarre 3 points in backtrack build, he wasn't able to accomplish anything for his team. Let's Get It, what the Death Prophet kept using Exorcism at the wrong time, since Momentum Dota, the only window of opportunity they had to win the game is if they could group up as 5 and take towers. They weren't able to take towers very effectively. I believe they only took 1 tower that entire game. And so Horsemen and Ruckus, once again, going for an Invoker first pick, and they stick with the same bans as last game. They really hate the Lycanthrope and Doombringer, and for good reason. They're both very powerful heroes. Looks like Momentum Dota, they decided to let the Tidehunter through the draft. At least through the first banning stage, since they banned out Clockwork, so UGTFO's favorite offlane hero is the Faceless Void and the Clockwork, both very powerful offlaners. In Horsemen and Ruckus, Doombringer as well, a very powerful offlaner. So 3 offlaner bans and the 1 core. Tidehunter as well as the Skywrath Mage coming out from the boys in Momentum Dota. Skywrath Mage synergizes very well with Tidehunter because the Ravage ensures that you can get a Mystic Flare off from one of the backline heroes. The Mystic Flare on one hero is usually enough to be able to kill him during the duration of that Ravage, especially with the Ravage damage and the Anchor Smash on top of that. And so it means you start these fights 4v5. Same kind of rational idea as the Faceless Void, but it's much easier to execute. Since Tidehunter, he's the most powerful offlane hero in the current metagame, because he's incredibly difficult to dislodge from lane. With 2 points up in the Kraken Shell, he's got a free poor man shield, and also means that if you gank him at full HP, he'll always be the purge off your CC and just walk back to his fountain. And with the Anchor Smash 60% damage debuff, if you can get it on 2-3 heroes when you gank him, you're not going to have enough damage to kill him. So he just walks away. He's able to always find his farm, since even if you do shut him down, he's able to recover by stacking and clearing Ancients, or stacking and clearing the jungle. When Tidehunter gets a blink, you can either initiate or counter-initiate, and that gives you a massive amount of teamfight impact, since it means that you can't initiate on the enemy team unless you're able to find a way to lock down the Tidehunter, either using the Global Silence to be able to prevent it from using anything at all, or unless you jump on the Tidehunter and have ability like Doom to prevent the Kraken Shell from proccing. Otherwise, he's able to get that reactive Ravage, and that can often be much more dangerous than the proactive Ravage when you go in and initiate on them. But otherwise, if you see a window of opportunity, we can blink in and catch off 3-4 heroes. You blink and use the Ravage to set up the fight. But while I've been saying that, very quick bans coming out, picks and bans coming out from both teams. Horsemen and Ruckus looks like they're going for UGTFO over in the offlane Centaur Warrunner. We've got an Enigma Tide combo coming from Momentum Dota, as Shadow Shaman and Brewmaster being banned up by Horsemen and Ruckus. They really don't want to deal with the Shadow Shaman, just because unless you're able to keep killing off the Shadow Shaman and shutting down the enemy team, Shadow Shaman becomes an absolute pain in the ass to play against, because with the Tidehunter you set up a very easy ward trap. You use the Ravage to set up the ward trap. The wards can also be used to push, and Shadow Shaman provides a lot of killing power, especially if he starts with boots and has Shackle at 1. You can set up kills for your tri-lane. Warrunner being banned out, so another respect ban. So only respect bans coming out from Momentum Dota, as Dumbledy plays a fantastic 1-position Warrunner, Method Man plays that fantastic 4-position Sand King, and UGTFO his signature Warrunner. But instead, Horsemen and Ruckus, they pick up the Witch Doctor, so Witch Doctor is going to be played by Gat. We could be seeing a Witch Doctor Venomancer combo. This is something that they love doing, because it's very powerful. You either start with the Gale, and to ensure that you get a good cast off, or if you get a good cast off, you cast to ensure the Gale lands, and once you land the Gale or the cast, you Maledict, and they're dead. The dot damage, as well as a few right clicks, is enough to ensure that no hero can survive that combination. Even if it's a very low point in the Malediction, even if it's a Malediction at 1 or 2, there's enough right click power coming up from 3 heroes beating at you, since the Venomous Gale, one of the most powerful level 1 abilities in the game. Personally, I believe it's the most powerful level 1 ability in the game. 15 seconds snap for 50% movement speed. If you get hit by a Gale, you're dead. It lasts for 15 seconds. You can't purge it, so I believe it will persist through Dark Pact as well as Bladespin. And so traditional modes of survival are completely ineffective against the Gale. And it gives you all the time in the world, since Witch Doctor, he's got incredibly high base damage. He makes up for it by having 0 armor, and he's got 600 range. So if you animation cancel all your attacks, with the Gale, there's very little chance of you surviving, unless the support rotates in, and even then, most likely only going to be a trade. And so the Tidehunter Enigma combo means that Horsemen and Ruckus, they're probably going to be smoking up or at least rotating into their jungle as 3 or as 5 to be able to ward up all of Enigma's camps. Since if you invest in all the sentries and you can block off all Enigma's camps, you shut them down, because otherwise, uncontested Enigma, assuming the player has his jungling patterns down, he's the fastest jungler in the game. Currently in the metagame, Lycanthrope used to be able to beat the Enigma, but Enigma still remains the fastest jungler. Chan and Enchantress can beat the Enigma only if you're able to get very lucky with your stacks and find a wildkin very early on. But even then, Enigma, most reliable jungler by far. If you leave him alone uncontested and don't block off any of his camps, as long as the Enigma player has his jungling patterns down, he should be able to get a 7-8 minute solo ring into mech. At the latest 9 to 10 minutes, since you don't really need boots on the jungle Enigma. And once you have the mech up and once you have the soul ring with the level 4 Eidolon, you group up and push, because you've got the Tidehunter, so it means that the Enigma doesn't have to go for a blink, at least not immediately. The Tidehunter can be the one to go in and initiate or counter initiate, and then Enigma walks and black holes them. And so Phantom Assassin, coming out from the boys of Momentum, Phantom Assassin, a very powerful carry, but at the same time she's very, very situational. Just because she is so easy to counter. If you get an early MKB up on your carry, PA becomes absolute food. She's also very squishy, and until she gets a BKB, it's very easy to control her or to nuke her down. The Witch Doctor doesn't really have to fare much from the Phantom Assassin, since if he gets a good Malediction Death Ward, the PA, even if she does kill him, will die from the damage from the Death Ward. As the advantage of Witch Doctor is he doesn't really fare that many carries, especially if he gets a lot of levels early on, because he can stand his ground with the Maledict and the Death Ward, and even if he dies, the Death Ward will deal enough damage in the time it takes for you to kill him, unless you're able to interrupt it. And we're going to Rubick pick up, so going with the Witch Doctor Rubick, not the greatest support duo. The advantages is the fact that you've got 2 support heroes with 600 range, and you've got the Rubick, so you've got great setup, because Rubick is a fantastic setup hero, since you lift them, then you throw them back, and so if you throw them back towards the range creep, then you can set up a very easy cast bounce. But otherwise, the drawback with this is you don't have any immediate kill power. Witch Doctor, he doesn't have any burst damage. He relies on Malediction and his right clicks to be able to get Q kills, and the Rubick as well, he has only got the Faith Bolt. His right clicks don't really do too much damage, he's very slow. And so he's really dependent on the other support hero to do all the work, or to do all the damage. All he does is provide the control. And so Silencer 5th ban coming out from Momentum, they're just banning out every single hero they don't want to play against. It happens that Horsemen and Ruckus can play, but they've got a very flexible and very diverse hero pool. And this is one of their strengths. As a group of 5 players that are all fairly experienced and have been playing together for a long time, they've got a very diverse range of heroes they can play. It's the same advantage that Blink enjoys. It's the fact that because you've got a squad of experienced players that like to go for these off-kilter picks, you always have that drafting advantage, because they can never ban out all the heroes that you're good at, and so you have to focus on that particular game and what your game plan is. But the Silencer in this case, fantastic ban, because it completely counters their entire lineup. If you have a grouping up as viable, you decide to initiate with the Blink Stampede coming out from the Centaur Warrunner, you pop the Global Silence when he goes in, Tidehunter can't do anything, Enigma can't do anything, Skywrath is completely useless. You could kill the Skywrath as well as the Enigma before the Global Silence wears off, and then Tidehunter, he throws out a Ravage, but at that point the rest of his team is dead, or your team has BKBs up. You can even kill the Tidehunter during that if you really want to, but the Enigma and the Skywrath are the priority targets. Skywrath because he's so squishy, and Enigma because you never want to deal with the Midnight Pulse in the Black Hole, or even the Black Hole period. And so Puck ban coming up from Horsemen and Ruckus to ensure that King Killer, who's going to be playing that Invoker in the mid lane, has a very easy time. Of course, Exalt Invoker actually does do very well against the Puck once you get a few levels, but if the Puck is able to win the lane at level 1 and level 2, which he should, because he's got a better animation, he's got better base damage than you, and he's got a pretty good animation. But instead they go for Queen of Pain. Queen of Pain v Invoker is actually not such an easy lane for the Queen of Pain as you'd think, because while Queen of Pain has got good animation and good base damage, she's very fragile. And so once the Invoker gets a few points up in the Exalt, he can out-deny the Queen of Pain, and when Queen of Pain goes very aggressively against the Invoker, if she blinks forward, she's going to be called out with the Cold Snap, and since you can't blink when you're called out with the Cold Snap, actually we're going to be seeing Double D on the Invoker, so he wants to show off his Invoker skills, and we're going to be seeing a Tiny as the hard carry. So I was talking about how Rubick provides you lockdown but lacks damage. Tiny gives you all the damage in the world. If you can do a perfect combo with the Avalanche into Toss, with maxed out Grow, I believe it does about 1100 magic damage. It's the reason why Tiny in Dota 1 and in Dota 2 before the Aghanim Scepter was introduced, you only played him as a ganker. You used to go mid, get levels up, and then you run around sending out kills. In Dota 2 and Dota 1, once the Aghanim Scepter was introduced, you only now play Tiny as a carry, because he is so damn good at what he does. Tiny does very well against the Templar Assassin, because Templar Assassin relies on attack speed to be able to get her kills, since she doesn't have to build damage with the coup de grace, or at least doesn't have to build damage early. And Tiny with the craggy exterior can stand on the ground, and since Phantom Assassin won't have enough damage to be able to instantly kill the Tiny, Tiny can just smack her around. Tiny's incredibly tanky as a carry hero, and that's his biggest strength, since all the items he built in the early game, the most common ones being treads, drums of endurance into the Aghanim scepter, it gives him a huge amount of survivability, and so he can just stand his ground and smack people around. So introducing the players from both teams, from Momentum, we've got Let's Get It, the captain, going to be over in the mid lane as the Queen of Pain. Pawntown, once again, going to be the one position player as the Phantom Assassin. GS Donkey, rotating to the off lane as the Tidehunter, starting with Boot, so he's playing a lot safer this time. Hopefully he'll be able to skill his hero correctly. We've got GG Boy, their stand-in, going to be the Big Boy, their stand-in going to be the Skywrath Mage, opting for Concussive Shot at 1, so they want to go for these early engagements. You usually want to hold on to your skill point until you see what you're up against. And Jesus on the Goon Sack, Enigma rotating to jungle actually doesn't have any clarities. You usually see at least 2 clarities. 2 clarities is the optimal amount for Enigma. Sage's Mask 2 clarities, that gives you just enough mana to be able to pick up your Soul Ring, and once you have your Soul Ring, since you're saving all that gold, you can either pick up support items, or you can quickly build towards your mech, which you need for your team to fight. Over for the boys at Horsemen and Ruckus, UGTFO going to be the offlane Centaur Warrunner, going for Stout Shield as well as Ring of Protection, so easy build up towards the Tranquil Boots. Invoker running to mid lane, being played by Dumbled, hasn't skilled a regen yet. He often likes to not skill the regents when he's showboating, so we'll see what he decides to do. He could actually go for Cross Wex if he really feels cocky, but most likely going to be Cross Exalt. And Gat's going to be the 4th position Witch Doctor, rotating around the map. Looks like he always opts for the early Gauntlet of Strength up on the Witch Doctor, which gives you a lot of survivability up on him. Would have preferred 3 GG Bunches because it's a lot more cost efficient. But the advantage of this is since Witch Doctor is the one that usually goes toward the Earner Shadows, it helps you build it a lot faster. And Method Man, Smoke as well as Sentry up on the Rubick. He's going to immediately try to de-ward out their safety ward. Very aggressive laning ward coming out from the boys and Horsemen and Ruckus. They want to be able to pick off this offlaner, even if Tide is very hard to kill. Kraken Shell won't... Actually, wait, Kraken Shell at 1! Once again, GS Donkey, you've done it again. You never skill Kraken Shell at 1. There is no situation where Kraken Shell at 1 is ever superior to any of your other abilities, especially if you're going boots first. And the reason for this is Kraken Shell works when you've got HP over 600. So after you take 600 points of damage, then the Kraken Shell will debuff you. At level 1 with no stat items, you don't have 600 HP. And so the only thing it gives you then is the 10 damage block, which is completely useless. If you get called out, you're going to die to all the right click damage, since 10 damage isn't really going to be a difference maker. You get more negative damage and more survivability from the Anchor Smash, and you get more killing power from the Gush. So if they ever dive you at your tier 1 and they're taking hits from the tower, then leveling a point in Gush could be viable because you can use the negative armor as well as the snare to keep yourself alive, but otherwise almost always Anchor Smash. There may be 1 in every 10 games you might have to level Gush, and that's a panic level at that. So a point in Kraken Shell gives you absolutely nothing. It makes you worse than useless. You're a glorified melee creep at this point. You're actually even worse than the melee creep. Since you can't really do anything, and Method Man, he knows this. He knows that if he had Anchor Smash, he would have Anchor Smashed them by now to mitigate some damage. He might actually know that what's the damage block coming up from him. He knows he's got Kraken Shell at 1 now. And so Method Man and Gats are just going to sit on top of him. He's not going to get any kind of farm at all. Whereas UGTFO, Hoof Stomp and double edge up, so Skywrath has to be careful. It's actually taking a fair amount of damage. And this is the advantage of the Centaur Warrunner, is that the supports ever rotate. Since it's only the Skywrath Mage, the Skywrath Mage also opted to skill Concussive Shot at 1. He's not doing anything at all. And so huge misplays coming out from the boys of Momentum Dota. They've actually given UGTFO a free lane. He's going to be able to hit level 3 before the Skywrath Mage gets a point up in the Arcane Bolt. He should have opted for a point in the Arcane Bolt at level 2 instead of the point in the Ancient Seal. Ancient Seal gives you absolutely nothing with the PA, because PA, all the damage is pure or physical. And you don't have any other support there. You're the only other person there. So the Ancient Seal isn't going to do anything against the Centaur. Centaur doesn't care if he's silenced. He's just going to walk away from you. And so this means that Centaur Warrunner will be at hit level 3 by the time you've got the Arcane Orb available from Skywrath Mage. And that means that if Skywrath Mage ever overcommits, or if UGTFO ever catches him out, he can go for a kill. Hoof Stomp into the double edge is a huge amount of damage. And when Skywrath Mage, while I say that, Tiny actually catches out GS Donkey. So the level 1 Kraken Shell, not really doing anything for you, and it shows. King Killer takes a very easy kill. Actually opted for a Quelling Blade on Tiny just to ensure he doesn't miss any CS. This Tiny has obscenely high base damage, but his animation is a bit clunky, so I can understand the Quelling Blade pickup just because you are playing that 1 position to ensure you don't miss anything. And Dumbled in the mid lane is actually taking a fair amount of damage because he's opted not to go for a point in the cross regen yet. He actually eats Charge Rate. That could be a death. Yeah, let's get it. Should be the kill. Actually, animation cancels that attack, and Dumbled stands his ground. Actually might be able to get a retaliatory kill. Yeah, let's go die to that. So misplays coming up from Let's Get It, who animation cancelled that first hit. If he'd gotten that and then thrown out the second attack in quick succession by animation cancelling his move order, he would be able to back off in time. But because you blink, whenever you blink aggressively against an Invoker, unless you're able to kill him very quickly, you can expect to die. Because Invoker can stand his ground with right clicks. He hits a lot harder than you. He's got... if he has the cold stun available, Dumbledy actually wouldn't have died there if he had the cold stun available. He actually could go for a courier kill. He gets a courier kill. The courier is worth about almost as much as the tower. He stands his ground once again. The Sun Strike is going to land, and Let's Get's going to be taking another death. He blinks out, so there you go, another trade. So Dumbledy and the Queen and Let's Get It both throwing their lives away, but he got the courier as well, so his team gets a huge influx of gold from that. 150 gold to every single hero this early on. That's a 1,000 gold lead at the 3-minute mark. That's a huge deal. As well as a 500 EXP lead, going in favor of the Radiant side. So that's just due to the fact that they've got the Enigma in the jungle. So you have that early game macro advantage because he's been uncontested. They actually haven't decided to ward off any of his camps. They went for a ward there, but unfortunately that ward looks like it was placed very recently. So they've decided to block off that camp. So UGTFO going for a bit of an unconventional safety wall. Would have actually expected them to place one there, or even in this game over there. Since it looks like Skywrath Mage, Jesus didn't even start with a sentry ward. So no attempt to control the offlane, and when you don't control the Centaur Warrunner, he destroys your entire team. Because Centaur Warrunner, he's like a Timbersaw, he's a ticking time bomb. You have to shut him down very early on when he's at his weakest, because otherwise, if he gets a good start, if he's able to pick up a very fast level 6, he can actually go for a solo double kill with maybe the Sunstrike follow-up. If Pawn Tail's ever left alone, you stampede yourself in, Hoof Stomp, Sunstrike flies up to the sun with the double edge, that's enough to kill him instantly. Phantom Assassin doesn't have a chance to respond. And PA using the dagger on UGTFO, bit of a misplay coming from me. He doesn't really give it down with the Tranquil Boots, he can just survive through that and just sustain himself back up. You want to hold on to your mana as a PA, especially if you're not going for an early Ring of Basilius. Because while your Stifling Dagger doesn't cost much mana, the fact that you don't have any mana regen at all without a Ring of Basilius, Let's Get It just needs a casual cold snap to prevent him from being the last hit. Dumbledy, with that double damage, should be able to easily outlast hit the Queen of Pain, especially now that he's got a few points up in the Exalt regen. So Queen of Pain no longer can rely on her right-click damage to be able to help her win this lane. So she actually is going for a bit of an unconventional build to put 2 points in the Shadow Strike. So this is something that a lot of Queen of Pain players like to do in the mid lane to ensure that they have a much easier time controlling the lane. And against an Invoker, it's not too bad. If he was going Quas Wex, and wouldn't have done too much because he's got enough points in the Quas that he could just out-sustain the Shadow Strike harass. But the drawback to this build is it means that you're not going to be able to go for these ganks until level 8 because you need level 4 Scream of Pain to be effective. Because unless you want to commit the ultimate as well, but even then you might not have enough damage to immediately kill a support hero, and if you don't immediately kill a support hero, especially with the Rubick as well as the Witch Doctor, they stun you, they stand their ground, they go for a kill. Geos Donkey, 2 points up in the Kraken Shell, but because he's got 2 CS on the best offlane hero in the game, because of that mistake, because of that misplay coming up from level 1. If he went for the Anchor Smash, he would at least be able to find some CS, he'd at least be able to prevent the 2 supports from poking him, and be able to zone him out, and he wouldn't have died. It would be much more difficult to kill a Tidehunter with the Anchor Smash up at level 1. But because he misplayed and opted to go for a point in the Kraken Shell, GS Donkey, really questionable skill builds coming up from him, and it's showing. It has a huge impact on the rest of his team. So the offlane player can't afford to make mistakes. The offlane player is the one that has to kind of carry his team through the mid game, especially if the mid happens to lose. And since the Queen of Pain actually is just breaking even with Dumbledy, he's got more denies though. So Dumbledy is just barely ahead, but actually it looks like Queen of Pain is decisively ahead with that kill EXP, since she's the one always getting the kill before she dies, so Dumbledy doesn't get the experience. So she's almost level 7 now, so Dumbledy actually losing the mid lane. And Queen of Pain can rotate, and he can't rotate at all, unless the enemy team misplays and he rotates in through a TP. So Let's Get It. Besides some sloppy players coming up from the rest of his team, he's doing okay. He still has lost his life a few times, so that means that Dumbledy is at least able to break even in terms of gold. Since in terms of net worth, I believe they're around the same. He's actually got more net worth, so he's got more gold, but she's got more experience. And Dumbledy will be interesting to see what he chooses to go for. He's a much more fan of the Midas build on the Invoker, especially since he's playing from behind, so it's a catch-up Midas. And UGTFO gets caught up with the Silence, so the Ancient Seal driving him off. It looks like he went in for the Hoof Stomp double edge, but he's going to back himself off for a bit, and with the Tranquil Boot sustain, he's going to be able to remain in lane. This is the issue with the Centaur Warrunner. It's because he's so beefy, and because he always goes for Tranquil Boots, you can't ever zone him out. You either kill him, or he's just able to back himself off and be able to regen back through the Tranquil Boots. And Big Boy, he's actually opting for a second point in the Concussive Shot. This is another misbuild coming up from him. You either max the Ancient Seal or you max the Arcane Bolt. Going for a second point in the Concussive Shot doesn't really give you anything. Concussive Shot, the only thing that increases is the damage. And it's a 60 damage increase. You don't need Concussive Shot for the damage, you need it for the snare. The cooldown reduction isn't really going to be effective, because you're never going to get 2 Concussive Shots off in the fight. You just have to get 1 off. And you just want to deal enough damage that you can kill them before the Concussive Shot is back off cooldown. The only time you'd ever want to go for and more points in the Concussive Shot over your Ancient Seal or your Arcane Bolt is if you're constantly, and I mean constantly fighting, so every 10-12 seconds you're going to be fighting, because you won't even have enough mana to be able to spam out your Concussive Shot, especially with your Arcane Bolt, because Arcane Bolt's mana cost is static, and so you want to usually max that out to give yourself a lot more mana efficiency as well as a bit more damage. Since Skywrath Mage actually does a huge amount of damage for a support hero, especially once the Mystic Flare comes online, or you max the Ancient Seal against a certain lineup, so if you're against, say, a Storm Spirit, or an Ember Spirit and you want to shut him down very early on, then you go for the maxed out Ancient Seal build, since if you can catch him out and silence him, that kills him. He can't do anything. Or if you're the Skywrath in the mid lane, you want to max out the Arcane Bolt to zone out the Panda, but then you want to immediately max out the Ancient Seal. Or if you're playing from behind, you could occasionally decide to opt for a maxed out Ancient Seal build if you're playing against the Panda as a 4 position or a 5 position. So when he blinks in, you can try to catch him out the silence before he's able to split. Let's Get It gets a free haste turn. As Double D, it looks like the Stampede was used. GS Donkey also rotating to mid lane, supports are rotating as well. And UGTFO is actually called to the entire enemy team. He's going to be feeding a kill, as there's 4 heroes there. Not really too sure what the Stampede was for, as he's playing very far forward, no backup. But the support's rotating to mid lane. They're smoked up. Method Man still smoked. Gats unfortunately looked like smoke broke. And Blink Dagger is the first item coming out from the Enigma, because he knows that GS Donkey, he's not getting his Blink anytime soon. He hasn't even been stacking his Ancient, so he's got no comeback recovery. And so when you pick the best offlane here in the game, and you don't set up any failsafes when you lose your lane, you're not executing your draft effectively. And that's going to turn around and bite you in the ass, especially when your team needs you to land these Ravages to be able to help set up fights. The advantage of the Enigma going from Blink Dagger is he can now start fights, but you never want Enigma to rush a Blink Dagger in any kind of serious game, unless you have another dedicated mech carrier that can get it faster or about the same speed you can, because you need that mech now. If Enigma blinks in and gets a great black hole off, then it's worth it, but the enemy team, they're not going to be grouping up this early on. No one groups up as 5 this early on unless you got a Death Ball lineup, but against Enigma, you don't do that because you know that there's the black hole online. And so if you have the mech, you can at least go for that split pushing presence, and you can at least group up. At least gives you that group team fight ability. Since having a mech faster than the enemy team means that you pretty much win the first fight, especially if you get it by the pre-10, pre-11 minute mark. 250 HP buffer for the rest of your team is absolutely huge in these fights, and that means that you could take a tower afterwards once you win that fight, because you've got enough HP up on you. And otherwise, if without the mech, you might be able to win the fight, but you'll be too low HP to be able to continue to push. And if you don't take the tower after you win a fight, then you're not really accomplishing your objective. You have to be able to take these objectives as a team very early on when you have a hero like an Enigma, since otherwise the pick is wasted. You're not really accomplishing what you need to do with him. Pawn Town looks like he opted for Phase Boots, even though he's the 1 position. It's usually a matter of preference, but with the PA, especially with the buff to blow, you usually see treads going up on him. And Gats is able to clean him up with the Malediction, so UGTFO Stamping being expanded, and this is the power of the Centaur Warrunner, especially one that hasn't been shut down. His only death is when he ran YOLO'd into the 4 of the enemy team. When the PA goes phase, he's even squishier. And when your Phantom Assassin is the only hero that can reliably provide right-click damage, Queen of Pain can if the game goes long enough, and if she builds right-click items. But at the rate that the game's going, she's going to need an early BKB if she wants to stay alive in these fights, because otherwise Tiny blows her up, otherwise Invoker tears her apart. Just with standing his ground with the cold snap, let's get it, because he's feeding his life away. One more right click from Town might be enough. Never mind. Big Boy runs in, catches him out the silence to prevent Double D from being able to get that last right click in with a cusp shot, and that saves her life. And Rubick, actually, never mind. Method Man able to clean him up. So they are able to take that tower, but without that mech, they're not able to take the fight, especially Queen of Pain dead. So Dumbledy, Midas up on him, so he's going for a much more greedier build, because he knows that Invoker, he's a fantastic late game hero, and you need that extra experience to help you snowball very quickly. Tiny actually opted for a Blink, so King Killer, Midas into Blink. You very rarely see Blink on Tiny. It used to be a core item and back when he was a ganker. Now that he's a carry, not so much, because you usually pick the Tiny with an IO, so you've got that relocate to help set you up. Or you don't even really need the Blink to well, I say that King Killer could be taking falls. Let's get it, should be the kill him. King Killer just stands his ground. Sunstrike flies out, if it lands, fortunately, just not enough damage. Centaur Warrunner does kill the GS Donkey in the background, from the look of it. And Pawn Town split pushing over in the bottom lane. He actually opted for Void Stone first over a Ring of Health. You never do this, especially on the PA. Ring of Basilius gives you all the mana regeneration you need, because you don't have enough intelligence to make use of the Void Stone. You're not even going to be using that much mana to begin with. Having a stick and a Ring of Basilius will solve your mana issues for the early to mid game. You're not going to be expending that much mana where Void Stone is ever worth it over the Ring of Health, because the Ring of Health means you could also jungle, since with the Poor Man's Shield and as well as with Blur, you may keep alive. It looks like PA is going for a much more active build, and King Killer catches him and kills him. So the Blink Dagger from Tiny actually doing work. GS Donkey called out once again. Looks like the Hoofstomp was saved by UGTFOs. He's juking up now. Method Man used to lift earlier. Anchor Smash flies out. Only catches on UGTFO. Hoofstomp actually lifts, but UGTFO with the double edge. Ravage is expanded defensively. And that's that's 2 minutes and a half where Tide is completely useless now. He can't do anything, especially if he doesn't even point and gush. And so Momentum Dota, they're not really able to execute that draft effectively once again, because now you're relying on the Blink Enigma to be able to set up a Black Hole. And Black Hole is a very finicky spell, because if you don't catch out the Tiny, the Witch Doctor, the Invoker or the Rubick. Actually, yeah, the only hero that you don't have to catch out is the Centaur. Every other hero on the Horsemen of the Ruckus can interrupt your black hole. And when you draft Tidehunter and Enigma, Enigma doesn't have to, shouldn't be building a Blink. He should be building Mech into BKB. Because you're going to be, the Tidehunter's going to be able to farm a Blink. Even if you completely lose the lane, he should be able to recover through Ancient stacking. Pawn Talon taking a gank. Mystic Fireflies on King Kill actually forces him back. And he could be taking a death now. Yeah, Pawn Talon's able to stand his ground. He goes for a kill. Skywrath Mage actually takes the last hit. So Pawn Talon, the Void Stone, it doesn't really give him much mana regen. So he could throw out the Stifling Daggers for as much as he wants, but for a fraction of the gold, going for Sage's Mask, going for the Ring of Basilius, he'd be able to do the exact same thing. Or even if he just didn't spam out the Stifling Dagger, he'd be able to do fine. Since he wasn't really contested, Centaur Warrunner should have been zoned out by the Skywrath, but Skywrath, a lot of huge misplays coming up from Momentum Dodo, as Skywrath opted to skill his point before he saw what the lane was. Against an offlaner, unless you're going for kills, Concussive Shell at 1 is completely useless. You can't use it to damage them, you can't really use it to zone them out, since the Centaur can just stand his ground and right-click you, if he really wants to, or if Centaur happened to opt for a point in return, you're taking more damage than he is. So, questionable decision making coming up from Momentum Dodo. In terms of the golden EXP lead, about 1,000 gold going in favor of Horsemen of Ruckus, so they have been throwing a bit by, with especially King Killer dying repeatedly, and about 2,000 EXP lead. In terms of net worth, King Killer still hasn't seen him in the last hits, 98 from the look of it, 94 for 22, so great CS up on him. But considering he's got the Quelling Blade, he really shouldn't be missing, he has no excuse for missing CS. GTFO blinks in the Stampede, catches the Pawn down, double edge, and the Fade Bolt comes up for Method Man to try to KS, but the UGTFO is able to get that kill. Actually opting only for 3 points in the Hoof Stomp before you choose to max out the return. You usually max out Hoof Stomp as your next ability, but just because the mana cost is static, and the damage increase, the stun increase isn't really too effective, but the damage increase is quite effective. Catches out G's on the Goonsack, he's got Black Hole, tosses him up, he could turn around the Black Hole if he wants, Deathly Blast and Meteor completely whiff. Dumbledy, please, stands his ground with the Cold Snap, G's on the Goonsack blinks up. King Killer's able to catch out G's, let's get it, he's got the toss available, so he can throw him back up to the end, throw out one more right click. Actually stands his ground with the Scream, and actually is able to secure a kill. Sonic Waves should be able to clean them up. Dumbledee's going to be very careful as well. The throw is coming up from Horsemen of the Ruckus, and they're kind of just YOLO diving in. Skywrath Mage is able to kill Dumbledee, and Queen of Pain gets a kill over on Method Man as well. Looks like Rubick also ran into that. I didn't even see him in the back line. And while that happens, UGTFO and Gats, they're split pushing the bottom lane. They know that was too late for them to read the response. Stampede all cooldown. UGTFO probably going to be picking up a Hood of Defiance, maybe be building towards a Pipe, especially against the Tide as well as the Queen of Pain. Since almost all the Queen of Pain's damage is magic, she does deal a fair amount of right click, especially if you get farm, because she's got good edgy growth. And she's got treads up as well, so you're able to reliably get hits in. Actually, looks like she's opting to only go for 2 points in Blink before she maxes out the Shadow Strike. With the Shadow Strike buff, this is a fairly viable build if you know how to position your Blink, if you know how to use your Blinks effectively. But since Let's Get It, he's been blinking very aggressively into the enemy team a lot, and it's actually cost him his deaths. Not really too sure that's the best idea, especially since you never know when King Killer can come out with the Blink Tag or the UGTFO, so double blink. You don't want to blink aggressively as a Queen of Pain when you're against Blink Initiators on the enemy team, because you need your Blink to use defensively. You could just walk in and throw out your abilities, especially with the increased range on Shadow Strike, and with the Sonic Wave. But once the Pipe of Insight comes online, as well as the Mech, not too sure he'll be building the mech. It'll have to be one of the supports. They don't have a mech carrier, a natural mech carrier otherwise. Invoker can go for the mech if he really wants to, but he probably doesn't want to. Jamie, once again, Sage's Mask up on him. He still does this despite it being so inefficient. The smoke rotation, looks like they spot out Pawn Town as they got that aggressive Absorber one up in the enemy jungle. And Pawn Town, he's been completely zoned out. UGTFO comes to the Stampede, Blink, Hoof Stomp, double edge, one more right click, and Witchlock's able to kill it. And while I say that, Dumbledee actually takes a fall. He's actually his worst Invoker game I've seen in a while. Looks like he's going Phase Drum over on the Quas Exile Invoker. Phase Drum is the build that you usually only go on Quas Wex Invoker, and that's a fairly old school build. It's a very outdated build. Nowadays, Quas Wex Invoker goes for very early Orchid Malevolence because it gives you a lot more killing power. And the Quas Exile Invoker, you either go for the burst damage build, where you go for the Yule Scepter, or otherwise you go Midas into the Necro 3. King Killer blinks out. This Geostonky finally is able to pick up his Blink Dagger off the back of all the throws coming out from Horsemen of Ruckus and the Tower Gold. And so now he can finally do his job and Blink Initiate for his team. But that's because he's able to farm it. Enigma looks like he's going for a BKB, so no mech coming out from the Enigma. If you pick an Enigma and you don't get a mech on him, when he's the only natural mech carrier, Tidehunter also can go for a mech, but he has bigger concerns, especially since he hasn't been farming too well. You need that mech in these fights, especially up against Centaur and up against a Tiny who rely on front-loading the majority of the damage. If you have a mech, if your support's able to survive the initial salvo, then you could turn these fights, especially with the counter initiation. And so, really questionable decision-making coming out from Momentum Dodo. I don't like it at all, because it doesn't suit their draft. It's an inefficient build coming out from their players. And Geostonky really has been dropping the ball for his team over in the offlane. especially considering the fact that he's playing the most powerful offlane hero currently in the game. Tidehunter should be able to easily win lane, especially as the Radiant offlane as well. That's a fact that I haven't even considered. Since the Radiant offlane, you have access to the hard camp there, so if the supports ever do a double pull through from here to here, you're always going to be at elite GXP compared to the Dire offlane where they're going to be pulling through there to there, so that means you have to expose yourself over there, so the supports can come in if you don't have a safety ward. Invoker just gets a casual kill over on Skywrath Mage. Can kill it, called up with the Malefice. He hasn't really been farming ever since he picked up the Blink Dagger. He's been too busy running around throwing. He does have treads up though, so treads as well as the drums makes him very tanky. Looks like he will probably be going towards the Enigma Scepter eventually. He just barely lands over. Let's get it. But Jason the Goonsack gets a good 2-man black hole. They're able to turn this fight. Actually, looks like he cancelled it as the stun from the card coming out from Witch Doctor is able to interrupt it. Black hole stolen by Method Man. He returns and Pawn Town gets a taste of his own messes and Death Wall cleans him up. Good response coming out from Horsemen of Ruckus. They lose 2. They lose 2 of their cores with an exchange. They get 5, and they're going to take that tail one off the back of that. So Horsemen of Ruckus playing sloppy, but some good plays coming out from Method Man as he steals the black hole. And so the fact that Rubick is being picked up in this game, while he isn't the greatest support duo, he does work very well against the lineup, since it means that the Enigma and the Tide, they have to catch Rubick every single time with their ultimates, otherwise he's going to steal it and return it back to them. Especially since Enigma with the black hole, because black hole's channeled, it's very easy to steal if he doesn't catch the Rubick. Whereas Tidehunter, if the Rubick isn't quick enough, or if he gets caught by the Ravage, then you can Anchor Smash, and then he won't be able to spell steal your Ravage, but the black hole, Enigma can't do anything unless he wants to prematurely interrupt his black hole. So good response coming out from Gats, who's able to throw in the cask. Honor Shadow is actually being picked up by Method Man, so it looks like Gats just had a casual gauntlet which he sold. So misplays coming out from both the supports from both teams. Jesus and Goonsack actually opting to max out the Midnight Pulse with only 2 points in the Malediction. You usually see a value point in the Midnight Pulse now at level 4, but you always want to max out the Malediction. Malediction is a very powerful stun, especially because it has multiple uses. With the 3 stuns, and each of the stuns, the duration increasing as well, you can use it to interrupt blinks. So if you catch out King Killer, you can prevent him from being able to blink out. And the staggered stuns actually is very effective, especially against heroes like the Witch Doctor that relied on channeled ultimates. And so Witch Doctor's caught by the Malefice, he can't use his Death Ward at all, since the second or third stun will be able to catch him out. While having 2 points in the Malefice still gives you that ability to interrupt it, you really need CC time, especially with the way Horsemen and Ruckus are playing. They're playing very YOLO, they're running up at you, they're going in one at a time, they're diving in towers. Having that maxed out Malefice gives you a lot more damage, a lot more control to be able to kill them when they do these YOLO plays. Orchid now up on the Queen of Pain, very delayed Orchid coming out from her. On the mid lane, Queen of Pain usually like to see about a 16-minute mark, especially since Queen of Pain is such an excellent laning hero. But since she did die a few times, she has recovered nicely in terms of kills, and in terms of net worth, she's actually not too far behind Dumblebee. But keep in mind that a lot of Horsemen of Ruckus' net worth, 2,000 for the Invoker as well as the Tiny, is spent on Midases. And so if the game drags out, those Midases are able to pay for themselves, so if they're able to drag the game out for about 7 more minutes, actually looks like King Killer saying I'll bait, so unfortunately revealing his plans to their enemy team. But with a quick pause coming up from both teams, we're going to take a look at the Golden Experience graph. 4,000 lead in favor of Horsemen of Ruckus. The Midases is starting to kick in, especially since Momentum Donor, they're playing grouped up. Pawn Town, he doesn't want to be on his own now, because every time he's on his own, usually TFO runs up to your face and cuts you in half with the double edge. Now the 5,000 EXP lead in favor of Horsemen of Ruckus. So Momentum Donor, if Horsemen continue to throw like this, they do have the option of being able to turn the game around. But because Horsemen of Ruckus have the superior late game lineup, especially since the Tiny can go man mode up against the PA, and the Rubick is always going to be is going to be able to deal a lot in these fights. Usually TFO, looks like he's almost got a pipe of inside up. Gats he catches that Let's Get It, Cast flies out as well as the Deafening Blast and the Malediction. Let's Get It just gets completely destroyed. And then over in the top lane, King Killer eats a reps to the face, and GS Donkey should be able to clean him up. But it looks like Pawn Tail's actually fairly low. So it looks like he went for a kill attempt on him, Sunstrike flies out, Enigma's able to clean him up. So King Killer, throwing like a champ, doing what a Horseman of Ruckus love to do. Get far ahead, then throw. This time they have been a bit more conservative. But again, number 2, I guess everyone's having a bit of fun, especially with the way that our draft is coming out. Top tier 1 being denied by Jason and the Goonsack, so it gives them a deprived team of gold. And the top tier 1 for the offlane is it's the lowest priority tower for both teams. Since it doesn't really give you much map control, the only advantage it gives you is easier ganking access, and it makes it much more difficult for you to farm your offlane. But the offlane is okay to sacrifice the offlane. It's the safe lane that you really want to be concerned about, but since they lost their safe lane, as well as their tier 1 mid, all this area is exposed because you can come in through here for a ganking path, you come in through there, and there's absolutely nothing they can really do to protect themselves. Since the TP support is going to be coming from the tier 2s, it's going to be very delayed, so unless the support hero is there with you or near you in the jungle, and you get called out and you're farming the jungle on your own, you're going to get called out, especially with the aggressive wards coming out. So Necronomicon coming out from Double D. So after investing in the phase drum, deciding to switch back and go for the Zoo build. The reason why phase drum isn't too effective is it delays your call. Necronomicon's a timing item. If you get Necro 3 by 20 minutes, there's nothing anyone else can do against you, especially with the double Forge Spirits up. But Dumbledy actually opting for a bit of it. He's going for much more of a pub bursty build, because usually if you go for the Necronomicon build, you want 4 points in the cost, so you have the double Forge Spirit. And while I say that, Tiny just kills Pawn Town just casually. That's the Blink burst combo coming up from him. So Avalanche in the toss, with the 2 points up and gross, about 980 magic damage coming up from him if you times that perfectly. You could miss a tick or two, and the Aghanim Scepter also increases that combo damage, but at that point, the combo damage is fairly irrelevant just because you right-click so damn hard. But he's almost got his Aghanim Scepter, he's about 1,000 gold off. And let's get it, he needs a BKB, so that Orchid, it's a great item if you can get it early or if you're ahead. When you're behind, and when the rest of your team is behind as well, the Orchid doesn't give you anything, because you can go in and go for the silence, and then you're going to get blown up by everybody else. It's a huge amount of CC coming out. Gats catches out, let's get it. He's unfortunately caught out with an entrance. He was supposed to miss Claire. It's a good response. Jason the Goonzak only catches out Method Man. This is what he has to do. Looks like he also used a BKB for that. Method Man coming to take him for. Look, no, never mind. He's on the standards ground. Death blow from Gats doing a lot of work. Gets a double kill. Good response coming out from Witch Doctor. And Method Man, he just owns himself. He actually cancels the earn as he walked into the Midnight Pulse. Hey, it looks like he also stole the Scream of Pain. So that's a tier 2 that could be taken for UTFO blinks, but GS Donkey blinks out in time. Looks like he's actually going for Drums of Endurance on a Tidehunter. I do not like this. So it doesn't give you anything for a Tide. You're not gonna you go Drums of Endurance on a carry hero or a hero that needs to survive. Tidehunter does not need to survive. He actually catches out 3 of the Ravage, so good Ravage coming up from him. PA instantly kills Gat. Method Man turns around. Unfortunately, he tried to steal out the Ravage. Unfortunately, steals the Yankee Smash, but he's more than happy with that. As Pawn Town took a fall, and Dumbledy gets 2 kills off the back of that. The drawback, since Enigma isn't going for the mechanism, you should be going for the mech. It's going to give you more survival and more utility than the drums. The drums give you nothing on the Tide. Drums of Endurance used to be a fantastic pickup for almost any hero because it was so cost efficient. With the nerf, so it costs a lot more in exchange for giving you 5 charges. It delays your core items too much. You only go drums on heroes that absolutely need it. Unless you're absolutely balls at the head. Even then, they're usually better items for the gold that you invest into Drums of Endurance. And King Killer takes the top tier 2. He's got his Aghanim Scepter up now. And so that, because you're wasting your gold on bad items and going for these bad skill builds, you're making the enemy team, you're making the enemy team a lot stronger because they no longer have to worry about certain things. So if for instance, you had a mech up on the Enigma, and the Titan was able to get an early blink, Horsemen and Ruckus have to play a lot more conservatively. They can't go for these YOLO dives. They can't group up as 5 casually and stroll down your lane because they know that they're meeting the team fight moment in Dota, which is superior. If you're able to get the Blink Ravage into the black hole, you win every single fight decisively, especially since the Ravage is there to disable the Rubick, to ensure that Enigma can get a good black hole off. And if Enigma doesn't have to go for a Blink, you can have a very early BKB instead. And also with the Mecha, so Mech and the BKB instead of the Blink Dagger on the Enigma, that means that you're able to win these fights decisively. So long as you're able to get a somewhat decent Ravage, so long as you catch up Method Man so he can't counter Ravage you, then that's all you really have to do. Then Enigma can just catch out. Even if he only catches out 1-2 heroes with the black hole, you have enough damage and enough lockdown to be able to win that fight decisively, and then you can take their towers. Because they've been going for these bizarre and inefficient builds, they're not able to do that. Horsemen and Ruckus are no longer afraid. They know that because they're going for these stupid builds because of the way they've been playing. They know they can decide to throw the game a bit and play hyper aggressive because there's nothing that the Momentum Dota can do. If you're wasting 2,000 gold on an item that gives you very little benefit, and when you're playing from behind, it just makes the game that much more difficult for you. The Sage's Mask doesn't really give you much. It could actually be a casual bracer going to a refresher roll, now that I look at it, but the casual bracer isn't really going to give you too much either, since you're tied into with the maxed out Kraken Shell, so you're going to be guaranteed to get your Ravage off. You just have to stay alive long enough to get a Ravage, and you're good to go. An Anchor Smash here and there is nice, but you should be able to get those off, since once Tide Ravages, you pretty much ignore him. You don't really have to deal with them. The Anchor Smash can make you force the issue, so force them to prioritize you as a target, but otherwise, you don't really have to build any more survivability. He really should be going towards a mech for his team. Since the Enigma still isn't going for the mech, he's got the BKB, but he used his ultimate on one target. And Method Man still survived at the end of it, since Gats was able to clean him up. So questionable decision making on the tactical as well as the strategic level. You never want to make strategic mistakes unless you absolutely have no other option. So if the enemy team forced the issue, King Killer blinks, he's got smacked down the Skywrath Mage. He's able to kill him off the cleave damage. Method Man turns around the Ravage, catches out 2. Pawn Tower also called out the Meteor as well as the Chaos Strike. And with the Death Lord's able to bring him down. Deafening Blast into the Meteor. King Killer with the Aghanim Scepter. They can breach high ground now. Tiny can 10-shot your tower, 10-12 shot your tower. Midnight Pulse has to be deployed, but Enigma backs off. He should have at least deployed the Midnight Pulse before he backed off, since now if he goes in for a Midnight Pulse, he puts himself in danger. And Necro 3 is online from Dumbledy, so the Zubo comes out. King Killer actually blinks and then throws him out. And Method Man takes King Killer's last hit with the Fade Bolt. And Momentum Dota, it's lights out for them. There's no way they can recover at this point. You hate to say this as a caster, but when it's a 20,000 gold lead going in favor of the enemy team, when you've wasted about 5,000 of your net worth on items that you shouldn't be going for, on a lineup that relies on winning the mid game, it's lights out. Especially since the late game lineup coming up from the enemy team is far superior. Method Man actually just gets tossed in by King Killer. So some throws coming out from him. King Killer's not too happy with him taking his last hit, so he takes his life instead. UGTFO with the pipe up. Able to ensure the creep wave is able to breach past the tier 3, since otherwise you want to get a mech up before you get a pipe. Unless you get certain lineups, he gets a great 4-man black hole off. Mystic Flare flying up as well. Unfortunately, it's a bit stacked. There's no Ravage to follow up. With the Stampede, there should be the disengage. They do lose one, but King Killer's at the edge of the model. He stands his ground. He should be able to kill one. UGTFO turns around with a double edge. Pawn down, stands his ground against UGTFO. UGTFO, he's back away. There's no support. King Killer running back in. He's got the toss available, so he should be able to get a kill over on Pawn down. Never mind, he's caught up the silence. Jason the Goon Sack. Continuing to throw out a few more right clicks. He actually stands his ground. He's man fighting. He finally takes the fall. They take a lot of resource for them to bring him down. And Witch Doctor gets stabbed up by Pawn Town. So the throws are real coming out from Horsemen and Ruckus, as Method Man says, noob team report please. But in terms of net worth, that's what they needed. It's still a 20,000 gold lead, but could be about a 17,000 gold lead, so they've had a lot of gold in their favor. The experience, only 15,000 experience lead. So a good black hole finally coming out from Jesus and the Goonsack over in the Enigma. They needed that about 20 minutes ago. They needed about 15 minutes ago if they wanted to win this game. Phantom Assassin going for Battle Fury. Not really a huge fan of the Battle Fury on the Phantom Assassin, unless you're able to get it very early on. So if you've got a defensive tri-lance able to ensure you can get it by, say, the 14 to 16 minute mark, then the Battle Fury is a great item on the PA. Otherwise, if you get it this late in the game, it's not going to give you anything. Because if you're relying too much on the cleave damage, you need a BKB in these fights. If you go in, Tiny stands his ground, smacks you around, he just avalanche combos you. Every single hero on the Horsemen of the Ruckus has a stun. They have disarms, they've got stuns up the ass, they've got snares as well available to them from that Stampede, and so they can disengage. And so the Battle Fury, it's a farming item on the PA, and PA is a carry that wants to be active in the mid stage of the game, even if you are just participating in ganks by throwing out your deck and going for right clicks. So if you went for the Max Blur build, with Treads maybe picking up a Midas instead, or going for an early Helmet Dominator to stack up camps, that will give you a lot more mid-game impact. Since Coup de Grace doesn't really, because you have Coup de Grace, you don't really have to build damage until later on. You have to first be able to stay alive in these fights, and then you want to build attack speed and stay alive in these fights. So that's why the Treads Blur build is usually superior to the Phase Blink Strike build. The advantage of this build is if you're able to find a lot of kills early on, so you've got the movement speed coming in from the Phase build, so it gives you a lot more chasing power, then it does add up. But in that case, you don't want to go for Battle Fury, because Battle Fury is a farming item that doesn't really give you any immediate impact. And so, and you're banking too much on getting a huge crit, and even if you do get a huge crit, you don't deal enough damage for it to really be worthwhile yet. Since King Killer, he's the highest priority target on their team, because if you don't kill King Killer, he'll kill your entire team. Now, especially now that he has a BKB, he can just run and smack you around. You can't man-fight the Tiny, because he's got Craggy Exterior up. Pops his BKB, he's got Blink, comes in, UCFO catches our big boy, just smack him down. So the only real target you could go on is, I guess, Method Man, but he could lift and throw you back up since you don't have a BKB. And Gats, but Gats can stand his ground with the Malediction. If he gets a Malediction off, even if he dies, he's able to turn it. They actually catch out 3 with the Ravage, but it's immediately stolen. So Stampede's been dropped, Chaos Meter as well, so Deafening Blast over in Pawn Town, no BKB up on him, he takes a fall. Deathwatch really clean, but King Killer smacks him down. We've got a buyback coming out from Let's Get It, also died in the back line. Necronomic and 3 minions running at him. Gears on the Goonsack. He doesn't have Black Hole. He's got it up in 8 seconds. Actually, looks like going for an Aghanim Scepter. So greed on greed coming up from the Enigma. Pawntown goes to the Method Man. Gats is immediately there. Throws at the cast. UTFO comes over. Let's get it. He gets tossed in the air by King Killer. Pawntown also going to take it death. Once again, never mind. The Black Hole comes out. Unfortunately, catch him out. Method Man, he steals it. And he's going to return the Black Hole right in your face. Midnight Pulse being dropped. Tornado flies through. Doesn't catch anybody. But they get another kill over the Enigma. So all he really did is buy time for Pawntown to escape. Pawntown could have actually chosen to stand his ground there. But Method Man doesn't go in. Gats actually eats the Mystic Flare and dies. So Plank can get greedy. Gats immediately buys back, so it's a mad bag coming up from him. But 2 racks advantage. Gats can actually... King Killer can go for the Megas if he really wants to, but he's just choosing to hang around the mid lane. Dumbledy. He's caught up in the Ancient Seal. Looks like he's going for a Refresher Orb, so he's going for the burst damage combo. Although you do need a Yule Scepter to set it up perfectly. So you also need the mana from that. Tornado flies out. There's the Meteor as well as the Deafening Blast. He refreshes. There we go. There's another Chaos Meteor as well as another Deafening Blast. The reason why you need the Yule Scepter is to be able to set up that first Chaos Meteor Deafening Blast. Otherwise, when they walk into you like that, you can just style on them. And GG being called 31 minutes into the game. Momentum Dota completely destroyed by Horsemen of Ruckus, partially as a result of Horsemen of Ruckus' superior execution, but also mostly a result of the fact that Momentum Dota, they failed to execute their draft once again. They've been going for these very questionable item and skill builds, and when you make strategic decisions like that, you pretty much hand the game over to the enemy team on a silver platter. As an experienced team, they're never going to exploit every advantage you give them, and so you never want to give them any more advantages than the ones they already have. And so that looks like that's it for tonight. I believe Recursion will be playing up against Momentum Dota later on. I think it's Recursion up against Momentum, so we could be having the last series of the Group 2 playoffs, but otherwise that'll be it for all. So stay tuned for more, but I'll be signing up for now.